Stream's live. I see a countdown.
Whoa, I see us. We're on screen. Hey, this is New Age. Guys, welcome to the very first IFSC Lounge. It's been called the podcast you didn't know you needed, which I think is fair. This is unique, Sean, and you're the first one on it.
I'm excited. I'm excited to be here. We are going to get record statistics because it's the first time. It's the last time. We're going to have the worst statistics. It is the first time. I'm super excited. Yeah, get into it.
Well, let's just explain what this is, because generally this is going to be a chat between climbers. And although if you're watching, you might occasionally see my face, often it's just going to be climbers talking to climbers, maybe route setters talking to climbers. And the idea is that it's about as informal as you could possibly get. Because although obviously you guys know I work for the IFSC, I'm allowed free reign. There's no one watching me. So it's going to be great. And look, the word legend is chucked around a lot in climbing, but we have the legend, the GOAT right now in front of me, Sean. So Sean, look, surely no one doesn't know who you are, but for people who don't, just give us a little rundown about who you climb for, who you are, and what you do within this climbing world.
Oh man, let's start by saying I kind of span generations of climbing now. I'm 36 years old. I'm a Canadian climber. I started climbing in 1997. Yeah, 1997. That's before 2000. I've been climbing, my whole life. I've done over exactly 200 World Cups and World Championship events. I would say I'm in the later stages of my career, but with the draw of the Olympics, for Tokyo, I really couldn't stop. But I'm also a pretty versatile climber. I've done lead, boulder, speed, a bit of cycle block, bit of random events like that, outdoor events, lots of stuff. I absolutely love climbing. And then for the past better part of a decade and a half, I also advocate for climbers. Joined the Athlete Commission in 2011. I became chair of the Athlete Commission in 2012. And now our chair is Shauna Coxey and I'm vice chair, but we both sit on the executive board of the International Federation of Sport Climbing. So that's the highest level of climbing, basically in the world. And it's exciting times. We are now in the Olympic Games. We had our first Olympics in Tokyo. We have our second Olympics in Paris as an additional sport. And then we are a core sport for LA 2028. So tons of stuff going on. I did manage to qualify and compete in the Olympics in 2020. So I am an Olympian. That was my lifelong dream, my lifelong goal. Currently, what are we? February 15th, 2024. I'm still chasing for Paris Olympics for my second. We'll see. I qualified for the OQS. And honestly, we'll see.
That's a good rundown. I've got the most important Olympic question possible, which is where is the Olympic tattoo currently? Have you got one, and where is it on your body?
So I think I was the first climber to get it because I got it like 3 days after the Olympics ended. I had it all mapped out, and I was like, okay, I better wait, not get the tattoo before, because if you like get injured or something, you don't actually. Yeah. I also did the April Fool's one along my chest, which was an April Fool's. It was not a real one. But then I eventually got my Olympic tattoo kind of just to the left of my belly button, close to my hip bone. So if I don't wear a t-shirt, you can see it, but it's not something I want to really stand up and be like, woo, right now. But if I'm not wearing a t-shirt, you can see it plain as day.
I'd have it across my face. It's just have it. And what do you do if you let's say you qualify again and you compete again? Do you get a double Olympic tattoo, or do you just put like ×2 on it?
I honestly, I don't think I would do either of those. I'd be tempted to maybe do something like, Tokyo, Paris, or like 2020, 2024, even though Tokyo is 2021. So I don't know. It's hard to say. I also would maybe think about getting because there's the Tokyo logo, which is like that. I forget what it's called, but whatever the logo, and then the Paris logo, which is pretty cool too, which is the flames. Honestly, I don't know. I might just leave it, but I'm pretty sure. I mean, I don't want to throw people under the bus, but not many people have 2 Olympic tattoos. I think it's a one and done kind of thing, and then you add to it. But no, one's good.
That's fair enough. Well, I'm going to stop talking about tattoos because this is my personal obsession. And I just want to remind people that if you're watching this and you want to join in, there's live comments on YouTube and on Facebook. So if you send us some questions, especially to Sean, we're going to get to those questions at the end. But do just say hello if you're watching. Let us know where in the world you're from, if you're enjoying this. And yeah, just say hello. All right, Sean, let's talk about injuries briefly because you came off the back of a big old shoulder injury. And then Pan Am's wasn't exactly injury-free either. So just tell me how you are physically and how those injuries are doing at the moment.
Yeah, so if people aren't familiar with my injury history, I guess, I actually credit a lot of my success in the climbing world to being relatively injury-free. Mm-hmm. People say, what's your advice for climbing? What's your number one advice? And I'm like, well, honestly, like, don't get injured. And it's easy to say, but it's more along the lines of like when you feel yourself going along the lines of getting injured, it's like take a step back and make sure you don't get injured. Mm-hmm. Again, I've been injured in my life. I think it's part of any person's athletic career, but I was pretty good in my career so far, worse at the end of it, to stay pretty injury free. That being said, I have ripped a pulley in one of my fingers. I had a problem with my C7 nerve. So that was I couldn't fire. I couldn't like hold on with one arm, which is interesting. And then my most recent injury, I guess my second most recent injury, was I did dislocate my shoulder at the World Cup in Salt Lake City in 2022, which is my biggest injury to date. And it was pretty close to being career ending. When I did it, I didn't actually realize how bad it would be because supposedly when you pull your shoulder out, it actually rips all the muscles around your labrum and everything. So it was actually pretty bad. But honestly, like I was already an Olympian. So I was like, if this is the end, this is the end. Like I would retire happy, but I was like, it'd be pretty cool to come back, try to qualify for Paris, give it my best shot. And hey, maybe I'm now the underdog coming back for the second Olympics. People don't generally see that, but I was honestly really happy just to do the whole 2023 season and see my progress being stronger and stronger. Because my goal wasn't like necessarily make finals at a World Cup or qualify at the World Championships or the Olympics. I was just saying if I'm better than the week before, it means when we come up to May and June of 2024, I'll have a shot to qualify for Paris. Fast forward a year and a half, I'm now, we'll say 95 to 99% recovered from the shoulder injury. Some other things, yeah, like you mentioned in Pan Am's, but I'm pretty recovered. So I'm looking forward to the OQS. It's 2 comps. Basically, you qualify or you don't qualify. It's a very basic formula. It's 2 comps. You kind of have to be top. Okay, whatever. There's 10 plus 2 spots. Mm-hmm. With some country quotas, I would estimate if you're top 14 twice, you're gonna make it. So it's exciting.
I'm excited about the format of it because like very rarely do we get this sort of like double header style, you know, where it's kind of like it's a bit of a cliffhanger off the first event, which is pretty cool. I mean, I'm excited to see that.
Yeah. So for those of you that aren't familiar, the OQS is a 2 event. So it's 2 competitions separated by about 3.5 weeks. The first one's in Shanghai. The second one's in Budapest. In the combined, so Boulder and lead, there's 48 climbers, 48 male, 48 female that go to the event. And you get points based on your ranking all the way down to 48. Off the top of my head, roughly 26 to 48 is all 1 point. And it starts by giving like 50 to first, and then it drops by like 4 points for a couple, and then 3 points, and then 2 points. And then they basically, after the 2 competitions, they just addition your scores. And it's the people with the highest scores, the top 10, plus there's a country quota for France, plus there's a universality quota, where if it's not filled, then it goes to the rest of the pool. So up to 12 spots. And so that's why I said, if you're roughly top 14 for the men, you're probably going to make it. And I chose 14 because let's say France. So France has most likely the 4 athletes, which is, Mejdi, Sam, Paul, and maybe Mika. Not sure how they're going to choose, but whatever. It's those 4 people. But only 2 of them can qualify. So if they come 1, 2, 3, 4, the first 2 would qualify, and then it would jump the next 2 because unfortunately there's a country quota. What's interesting is that for the women, there is only 1 spot for the USA and 1 spot for Japan. 1 remaining spot, but they still send 4 athletes. So again, if they're 1, 2, 3, 4 USA, 5, 6, 7, 8 Japan, the first US girl qualifies, and unfortunately the rest don't. And then the first Japanese woman qualifies, and the rest don't. Which means that down the list, you could be maybe now 16 or 17 or 18 and still qualify. Also for Slovenian women with the Anya qualifying. I guess it would be whoever qualified an athlete, and then they only have one. But with those nations that have really good, more than 2 or 3 really good athletes on the top 20, it keeps bumping down the rankings. And so it's, it'd be a really interesting competition to watch. For goals, hard to say. If I make round of 20, pretty happy. If I make finals and be in the top 8, I'm kind of over the moon. And if I don't make semis, so I'm not top 20, then I kind of go all in for the second one and hope to make semis at the second one. So we'll see.
Well, yeah, good luck with that, man. I know you've got a lot of support. There's fact people talking on YouTube chat right now. Quinn Thompson is very active, asking you some questions that I'll come to at the end. So do say hello, guys, if you're watching on that. Now, Sean, tell me a bit about you, because obviously I see you on the circuit around the world all the time, but you're based in Canada now, but you used to be in France. You've had a pretty diverse sort of career and where you're living. So where's home for you right now? Where are you at?
So back in Vancouver. Honestly, I was born and raised in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. And I eventually came back here because honestly, I love it. I love Vancouver. It's really close to Squamish for those that are interested in outdoor climbing. And it's a really beautiful city. Honestly, I did get to live in a number of cities kind of as I was going through I always call it like the bulk of my career, where I was like, I don't know, 20 to 28 or something, 20 to 30, I don't know, something like that. But I did live in France for a number of years with my ex-girlfriend. And honestly, those years were really good for my career. I got to live in France. Technically, I wasn't living in France for more than a year. I was always on a 1-year visa for France, which was beneficial actually for everything. And so I got to train a lot with the French team, because then I was based in France, lived in France. I got to train with the Swiss team, the Austrian team, the Slovenian team, the German team. So basically all the European teams. And it was fun. I was in French immersion, so I was fluent in French before I went. And when I say fluent, I meant I could understand a lot of French and speak some. It wasn't until I lived there for probably half a year that I then actually became fluent, learning a whole bunch of the nuances and stuff like that. But I got to live in France, and it was fun. And then honestly, when that ended, and then I came back to Vancouver, then I was always based out of Greater Vancouver, but I ended up traveling so much. I mean, I remember for a few years in a row, I tracked how often I was outside of Canada, and it was almost half the year, and it felt like 2/3 or 3/4 of the year. But a lot of trips where I would just go away for 1 or 2 months. Obviously, I can only be in Europe for the Schengen visa for, 90 days? The constant evolving of those rules. But I know them very well, and I got to make sure I don't break any rules, and don't want to get in any trouble.
Yeah, well, I've had to dodge the rules via Brexit, which was a wonderful decision. So I'm with you on the visa situation. Look, I wanted to talk to you about something that because, as you mentioned, you've had a long career in climbing, and people always talk about this thing of experience and inexperience, right? So I kind of get inexperience. You often see athletes perhaps having a little minor meltdown, or making those classic mistakes you see early on. But what I wanted to talk to you about is experience. So how does that benefit you when you come into these competitions, and how do you draw on that experience in order to progress? What does that look like for you?
So experience is useful. It's in the competition realm. It's actually really funny because there's a bit of a switch. Before you become a known World Cup climber, no one expects you to do well. So no one knows who you are. There's no expectations. So you're actually competing at 90 or close to 100% efficiency. Then, and it's a little bit funny because I've not studied this, but I've studied this. There's always a drop off after a World Cup climber makes a couple of World Cup finals, especially in 1 year. There's always a drop off. And I forget what I called it a number of years ago, but I almost coined a term. But basically, a World Cup competitor will make a final or two, and then all of a sudden there's this pressure And then they're like, oh, that climber needs to keep making finals because they're continuing to get better. And there's a drop off, and they drop down, and then they struggle to make finals. And sometimes that gap or that time period, that's the part that's different. It could last 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years. I think the longest we've seen it is like, I want to say 2 or 3 years. And the thing is, and this is the unfortunate part, some stop climbing because they can't find that high again, we'll say.
Yeah.
And the others that grind away, train and grind, they slowly creep back up to that level, and then they maintain it for what we call their career. But that hump and the drop and the coming back, the little wave, is present in, I would say, 90 to 95% of the top World Cup climbers. And the reason I don't group everyone in there is because I would say the phenoms like the Yanyas and the Adamandras, they don't have that drop off because they were just the exception to the rule. But everyone else, and it's cool when you go and look at it, it's interesting when you see people in the drop and you're just like, no, just like keep going, keep going, keep going. And then again, they get back into it and then they can maintain, and they usually don't drop. I mean, sometimes a little bit of a wave, but it's super interesting, and every climber has it.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've got questions coming in about experience actually on the YouTube comments, and who is it? Dave Wilson's asking, is there a difference? And I know there's only been one, so this is one of those things, but the experience of being at an Olympic Games compared to being at like a World Cup or a World Championships, obviously there's this pressure ramp up, but what is different about that event from your experience? Because it's something that very few people in the world know about, you know, like it's few athletes who are at that level. So what does it feel?
The actual Olympic competition, it was special because it was the Olympics. But when you look at the people competing in it, it's actually technically easier than a World Cup or a World Championships because there's only 20 of us.
Huh.
You take out the other, I don't know, in a World Cup, there's 180, there's 40 or 50 that can maybe make semis, which is the round of 20 or 26. And then there's usually the 12 to 15 that could potentially make finals, 6 to 8. The Olympics, there's only 20 of them now. It's an easier competition with higher stakes. So it's like, it's harder to qualify. And then once you get to the competition, there's 20 of you. So again, it's a really weird world. And then on top of that, we had the whole lockdown and COVID. And so that was the most interesting part for me during the Olympics, because honestly, as a Canadian, we were locked down pretty tight, not as tight as Australia per se, but we weren't allowed to leave and we weren't allowed to go to businesses. And so like all the climbing gyms around me closed, mandated by the federal government. And technically they were allowed to open, but almost none of them did. Only one of them opened for Alana and me, and the others just stayed closed. And they said no. And I asked them, I said, hey, would you open? I need to train for the Olympics. And they're like, no, we're closed. And I'm like, it's in the federal mandate. You guys can open for literally Olympians. And they said no. And I don't want to throw people under the bus like that, but it was really hard to train. And that's when I actually made my home wall, because I needed it. And I wrote about this and I said, it was the most liberating thing because I could then have a place to train. But at the same time, it felt like a jail because I literally couldn't leave. I went from my home, my apartment, to the gym and back and forth and back and forth. And so what I could do training for the Olympics, I executed at 100% efficiency, in my opinion. Literally couldn't leave the country. But the training I had in my gym, I would give a 7 out of 10 globally if there was no lockdown and I could travel to Europe and train with my friends and travel to the States and stuff like that. So I went into the Olympics somewhere between 7 and 10 because I was training at 7% efficient, 70% efficiency, but it was still the best I could do. And it was hard because the hardest part was seeing other stuff kind of on social media or knowing what my friends were doing. And I knew a lot of the Europeans kind of like free reign. They could do whatever they want. And I don't think this is throwing them under the bus or anything, but I know specifically that, the French and the Austrians, they had whole gyms closed down for them and they could continue training as well as they could. It definitely affected the way, I guess, the Olympics played out. I got to the Olympics and I was mostly just so happy that they could happen. Obviously with the threat of it being canceled and everything. And I competed as well as I could in whatever physical manner I was. And in the end, it was a little bit underwhelming because I felt like I didn't get the training that I needed, which again, poor me, right? But that's how I felt. And I didn't care because we went and everyone showed up. And regardless of what everyone placed, I feel like everyone had a really good time.
I want to ask you more about your training facility because I'm a bit of like a sort of a cellar climbing nerd. What's it like? Have you got a moon board set up? Like, tell me the details here. Go a bit geeky on us.
So it was old now. It actually was dismantled right before the Olympics. They built it on my friend's property, and they actually sold that property right before the Olympics. So I wasn't even there for the dismantling. I was literally at a training camp right before the Olympics, and then it got dismantled. It was 14 and a half feet wide. It was 12 feet long, whatever, I messed that up. And it was 11 feet straight up and down. On one side, it had a vertical wall. So it had walls on all four sides, like a cage. And the other side was a 29-degree overhang with like a 2-foot kick plate on the bottom. And I made it just well enough where if you fell off the last move of the overhang, you come close to hitting the vertical wall, but I'm a professional, so I took a chance. Then
Is that why you had 1%? Is that why it was 29 instead of 30?
No, I put it as steep as I could, and I'm like, go, and then I'm like, hey, stop. Okay, drill it in, and then it happened to be 29 degrees. Like, it could have been anything. I literally was looking at where the base was and where the top was and where I was going to fall. And so, like, I didn't put big volumes on the vertical wall while I was doing hard boulder problems on the other wall. But I got custom matting from Flash, so it was the whole thing was matted. There was an emergency exit just in case the main door caught fire, which is pretty funny. And it was fun. It was fun to build. I did my own texture on my walls. I basically built boulder problems every day. I spent probably like 5 or 6 hours there almost every day. Some of it climbing, some of it route setting. I love doing like unboxing videos and setting videos. And then funny enough, I actually just rebuilt a new gym. And so that's just going to start up again. For now, it's only a big vertical wall. So it's going to be a whole bunch of technical skills with like a little bit of a roof. But I'm happy, pretty stoked just to kind of get back into that and start creating my own content. Honestly, it's just free reign. I don't have to worry about a gym. I do a boulder. It's a cool boulder, but I want to make it a little bit harder or change it. Mm-hmm. And the gym's like, no, you can't change anything. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I understand, but now I can change everything. So put it two inches farther or block it a bit more or make it, I don't know, 3-5 degrees more. Can change it.
I want to do a series this year where I like go to climbers' houses and like look at their setup because I think it's something that's like fascinating. Like looking at it because I think it's so personal as well. Like how a climber trains, especially behind the scenes, is super interesting for me. You were talking about boulders. Now, for me, when I watch a competition, like they tend to sometimes blend into one a little bit. But do you have a boulder or a lead route which you specifically remember, like something savagely hard or like an insane move, or like, or are they all just the same in your head?
That's funny. So I do consider myself to have a really good memory of this kind of thing. And you say like, what's your favorite boulder
or least favorite? Could it be something memorable?
I mean, okay, least favorite, easy. Okay, so there have been a couple. I'm trying to remember. I remember 2 of them. I don't think it's ever happened in a World Cup. There have been a few boulders that I physically could not start. So maybe I won't actually mention where they were because I don't know. Are you
talking about height here or like just a position?
Well, yeah, I would say I guess it was probably like a flexibility thing.
Okay.
But basically, if you were at my height, we'll say 5'7", you had to be 80% able to do the splits. That's just a random number, but to be able to start the boulder. And you physically could not do it any other way. And I can't get 80% into the splits. I can get maybe 65. Anyways, I wasn't super close, but I was nowhere close to doing this. It was a split start, and then you put your hands up and you touched a little jib. And you couldn't reach doing it any other way, so you had to have your feet on the bottom. I literally got out there. I was like a foot away from the hole. I started stretching on the mats. I stretched for 4.5 minutes, trying it intermittently. Didn't start the boulder. Anyways, it happened another time, but it was a different thing, and it was because everyone that actually started the boulder was cheating. So again, different story. Coming to my favorite boulders, I remember most of the boulders just because that's kind of the way my mind works. But the ones that I remember that would just be outstanding would be the boulders that I completed to win my World Cups. So I've won 2 Boulder World Cups. The first one was in 2013 in Log Dragomir, Slovenia. And I knew when I came out to my 4th boulder, if I did the boulder in my 5 minutes, I was the winner, because I was the only one to do 3 out of 4 coming into that boulder.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was nervous, and the boulder hadn't been done by the previous, I think it was 2 or 3 competitors. And fortunately, I came out and flashed it. And so when I flashed it, I knew I had won. So for me, that was really memorable. And then similar in Chongqing in 2016, again, came out to the last boulder, and I was the only one that had 3 boulders, or I had like 4 or 5 tries on top. No, it wasn't. I for sure just had to do the boulder. But everyone before me had done the boulder. And so I knew that it's like I should be able to do this boulder. And it took me like 4 tries. And Jorg Verhoeven said that I was visibly shaking on the mats in between tries, because I was like, I should be able to do this. I should be able to do this. And I was like, I was blowing it. Like I was blowing it. And so in between tries 3 and 4, I took like an extra 5 to 10 seconds and, kind of like woke myself up and like did it. But both scary and one of the best feelings in the world when I did top it, because I knew I'd won. So again, you can probably get that similar story when they top a boulder and they know they've won, especially for the first one and stuff like that. But it's funny. I remember a lot of different boulders. So if you were like mostly in finals, because I don't know, for some reason just remember those, but you could be like this finals at this event. Do you remember one of the boulders? And usually I can pick one up. Okay.
Well, that's good knowledge, man. That's good remembrance. By the way, I've just unblurred my background because apparently my camera's going all crazy. So hopefully that would help people.
Audio's good, bro.
Is that you what, sorry?
Audio is good. Video.
That's what we care about, isn't it? There's a question from Jan Havel, and I know Jan Havel from many competitions who he's obsessed with YouTube Lives, but he's talking about, and this kind of leads into what you do within the IFSC as well, because he's talking about life outside of competitions, like what's next for you as a career, because obviously, like every athlete's got to have that in the back of their mind, like because at some point you're going to stop competing and you've got to earn money outside of it. So what's I know you've still got the Olympics, you've got a lot to do for the sport, but do you have half a mind on what's coming next for you?
It's funny. I've thought about this specific question for the better part of a decade. Oh, okay. Again, like I'm 36. So when I was 26, I was like, what am I going to do when I retire? Maybe I'll retire next year or the year after that. Mm-hmm. And honestly, there's no simple question. I have many, I guess, elements that I could do. The top things that kind of come to mind is like, do I work with the National Federation? I love working with the International Federation. Do I do some sort of coaching? My like bucket goal or like dream, whatever you want to call it, would be to coach an athlete that eventually made the Olympics. So it's like, how do I bridge through that? I don't know if I would go straight to coaching, or do I take a few years and go into it, or do I start working with the National Federation and like doing it through that path? But like for me, now that I've done it, it's like I loved it, and so that is definitely a path. But I would kind of say that regardless of wherever my path goes, like I love climbing, so I'm going to stay in it. Whether it's for a company or a federation or as an athlete rep on some board or something, there's always going to be something climbing. And that's kind of just me. Maybe I go climb outside for a while. I know like I get angry with how much I don't get to climb outside because I dedicate so much of it to indoor. And at the same time, I know that I choose to do it. And so I could go outside a lot more. I could sacrifice training and stuff. And I choose to do more training and stay indoors because of just the time and spend here in Vancouver. But definitely something in climbing. I love how, maybe I don't love how fast we're growing, but I love how fast we're growing. Some challenges, but basically I love climbing and I'd like it to be a part of my life for the rest of my life.
I think that's pretty reasonable. Now, Sean, I was going to ask you a question that's quite pertinent, but I'm being told by the voice of my ears, which is my phone, that we have a special guest waiting. In fact, there she is, which is Alana. Alana, what's up? How are you?
Hi, good. How are you?
I'm very jet lagged, but I'm okay. How are you? How was the you did a competition recently? How'd it go?
Good. Yeah, I was at a women's climbing festival called Woman Up in LA. So
Okay.
it was a lot of fun.
Nice. It looked good.
Yeah.
Good. Alana, it is lovely to see you. We're going to talk about a few things, but one of them I was just about to bring up, and I thought this is quite relevant that you're coming on, is that Sean's on the Athlete Commission. You and me had a chat, sort of was caught on air, that everyone knows about throughout the world, about Red S and what's been going on with that. So Sean, could you just, I know this is a complicated issue, but could you just talk about the role the Athlete Commission has played within this and what is going on at the moment with the IFSC? And then maybe, Alana, we can get your sort of feedback on it as well. But yeah, Sean, what's happening at the moment with that?
All right. So I've been on the Athlete Commission since 2011. Let's do some math, like 13 or 14 years. And athlete health has always been on our agenda, and we've honestly never not come up, but we've never found a great way to measure it or to control it. We tried a lot with education, which I feel like actually didn't work super well. But it's always been on the agenda for the Athletes Commission over more than a decade. And now we've gotten to a point where we do Red S screening, and I'm honestly not the most, it's hard because there's a lot of information about it, and I'm not the best at explaining it perfectly, but I know that there's a lot of information on the IFSC website and stuff like that, and the Athlete Commission is fully on board with it, and so that's the main point. And I believe now it's going to be implemented for the 2024 season, and we've made good steps in the last year, 2 years. We've been working on this for a long time, and I think it's going in the right direction. And I know Alana's a lot closer to this too, and so she'll be able to give you more information.
Yeah, because I mean, Alana, this is something that you've been so passionate about for a long time, and it's something you've been very vocal about. So yeah, from your point of view, tell us a bit about the new system, and is it? I suppose what everyone really wants to know, is it going to change what's been going on, and are we going to see a difference in the sport? Because they know it's pretty revolutionary. There aren't many federations and sports doing what we're trying to do with this. So yeah, just tell us a bit about it from your point of view.
Yeah, well, I think going back to what Sean said a little bit there, he's been pushing for better athlete health regulations for over 10 years, but there weren't, like he said, any good ways to test for Red S. But it's only been in the last 2 years that the IOC has released some consensus statements, kind of showing, first explaining what Red S was and evolving it from what used to be the female athlete triad, which obviously didn't include male athletes at all, and didn't include a number of other considerations, effects that Red S can have on your body. And so now in the fall, the IOC released a new consensus statement showing categorically how you can test for Red S. So including a number of critical primary indicators, secondary and tertiary indicators, and kind of what medical values for each will show that you might or might not have Red S. So what's coming in 2024 are some regulations where all athletes will have to report, or the national federations will self-report data on a few of these indicators. And if the results are, you either get a green light or an orange light, basically. Green light means you're cleared, no further testing, you get your license and you can compete. And then orange light means you have to go through some further tests that your results of these tests were inconclusive. You potentially have Red S. It doesn't mean that you do, but you'll have to go. Then the secondary indicators are I believe, bone density, and some slightly more invasive tests. Then the primary ones are really non-invasive testing.
Yeah.
And in addition, there will be some random screening at each event. So I think though some things that will be measured there will be like, in addition to height and weight, there'll be like blood pressure at rest, lying down and standing up, which is apparently a good indicator. And athletes could be pulled from events if they test positive at an event, basically.
Okay. And
so,
we should, oh, sorry, go on.
Oh yeah, so we should be seeing these come into effect this season with the first World Cups. Yeah, and I mean, it remains to be seen whether it's going to be enough. I think we are, I believe, the first international federation to take any action. I mean, the IOC consensus, the most recent consensus statement was only released in, I want to say September, maybe October, something like that, of 2023. So it's like very new. And yeah, we're the first ones to really take action on this. I would always love to see even like stricter regulations with more random testing, better return to play guidelines for national federations saying if your athlete gets removed from competition at some point, these are the steps that you must follow to make sure that they get back to health. But it's all new and evolving, and I'm really hoping to see some changes in the sport from these regulations. But
for sure. And thank you to the both of you for the work you've done on that. Like, I know it's been hugely important, and I think it just shows how important it is to have athletes on that athletes commission and have that feedback. So thank you. And Alana, while we've got you, I wanted to talk, and I'm sure you're okay to talk. Recently you developed alopecia, and that's something that I know you've been very, very vocal about. And, you know, from my point of view, like, incredible what you're doing. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, or you don't have to? I just didn't know if you wanted to bring it up and how you're feeling, if you're okay, and how life is.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it was quite a shock. It happened really fast. Within kind of a month, I had a lot of my hair fall out. But I shaved off the rest of my hair kind of in early January, once it became like, it came to a point where there was so little of it left and I was afraid of even touching it. It was just falling out everywhere. But I've felt a lot better since I've done that. And it's not that the alopecia has like gone away just because I shaved my hair. But I think for now, like, I'm like happy with where I'm at. I'm like more self-confident now that I'm just bald instead of like worrying about my hair falling out all the time. But it's been really good, really helpful for me to still have other than alopecia, like I have my health.
Yeah.
And I've been able to still climb and train. I've been spending quite a bit of time training with Sean, and I think what's been nice is like Sean and the rest of my friends, like everyone treats me exactly the same, and that really helped.
Well, that's good to hear. Well, listen, I wanted to ask you to ask a question to Sean, because obviously you know him far better than I know him, because you travel the world with him on a regular basis. Have you got a question for Sean that you've always wanted to ask, that now the world is watching, you could ask? To put you on the spot, anyway.
Oh man, yeah, I haven't considered this. Well, I think tomorrow I get to come try out Sean's home wall his new home wall for the first time.
Yeah.
So really the burning question on my mind is, what are you going to set? What movements are we going to play on tomorrow?
Oh, that's a good question. It's funny because usually when I open new boxes of holds, the Boulder problems, they just speak to me. It's probably because I remember a hold and I'm like, I'm going to do this, and this. But I've been screenshotting Instagram boulders where I'm like, I can set that boulder. And I literally saw a boulder. It was like Tomoa in qualifiers or semifinals at the most recent Japan Cup. And it's the one where they're huge, like 4-foot volumes, and they hold like 4 inches of the bottom of every one. They barely use any of the volumes. Hilarious. And so I'm going to try to do that. So something like going right to left. And then there was another one, and I believe it was at a French camp where there was like a hexagon. And again, it's like a dynamic movement, and you got to like dab the dual text and then hop onto the foothold, and your left foot comes in onto the dual text, and you got to hold. But yeah, I have 3 or 4 screenshots, so we're just going to do that. And if it's too hard, then we make it easier. And if it's too easy, then we make it a little bit harder, or we just stitch it together for Instagram.
This is amazing. Well, you got to follow Sean and Alana's Instagrams to find out. I want to see stage 2 of this conversation. Sean, are you getting holds for free, or like, are you having to buy these things?
It's hard. I started reaching out to companies in like pandemic COVID, and I basically said like, hey guys, look, I'm making this wall. I would love to get holds for free and feature you on Instagram, but totally understand that asking for free holds when you're probably already losing a ton of business because of the pandemic is optimistic. So a lot of them have said like, oh, yeah, totally, we'll send you. And then again, the boxes have varied, and we'll say like dollar amounts from anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000. So a lot of companies actually sent me about $2,000 worth of holds. And then with some other ones, they were like, yeah, unfortunately, it's really hard on us because of the pandemic. So we can't send any for free. And then I was like, no worries. I would like to order these amounts. And then the totals came to like, say, between $2,000 and $4,000. And then they're like, oh, okay, well, it's really cool that you're going to spend that much money. We'll give you $2,000 for free, or 50% off, or 40% off. And so now I literally just reach out and I just say, hey, this is what's happened in the past. I really want these holds. Can you give me a discount? And if you can't, yeah, maybe I take it, maybe I don't. I don't know. Don't want to like throw myself under the bus here, but most of the companies, I think I have 15 companies in my cave now. It's actually really fun. It's really fun to promote that singular company on the wall. It's always the same color anyways. And then I have the flexibility to literally set a great boulder, climb it, film it, and then take it down if I need to, or make it harder or train more on it. And so I was actually really, really surprised, actually, the support from all the climbing brands that supported my cave, especially during COVID. And I hope it helped them as well during a time where there wasn't a lot of climbing content. There was a cave just all alone. But I really loved it, and I see it going places for this one leading into Paris.
Okay, well, I've been told specifically that I had to stop this 40 minutes in, and we're now at 45, and we've got a cut off at 50 minutes. So I'm going to have to, and there's so many questions I haven't asked you, but we are now going to flick over to Instagram because people were asking questions on Instagram. We've got to cover those. But Sean, be aware we've got 8 minutes, okay? So keep these fairly tight. First of all, from Sophie Weber, how do you deal mentally with injuries? I feel we've kind of covered that at the beginning of the conversation. With you, but like, have you guys got any advice if someone's injured out there? Like, how do they mentally get through that? Because physically you kind of know, don't you, if what's wrong with an injury, but mentally, what do you do?
For me, mentally, when I was coming back from injuries, it was relatively simple. It was try to just be stronger than you were the week before, and don't worry where you were before the injury. Focus on getting healed from the injury. Okay.
Alana, you got any tips?
I think that covers it.
Sweet, that'll do. Okay, from Noah Walker. It was a bit of a cheeky question, but how can we make IFSC World Cups exciting again? Now people are focused on the Olympics. No, I think IFSC World Cups are pretty exciting. But if you guys were going to do something to really sort of change the game a little bit, would you bring something in? And let's not get too into like specific, let's get specific. What would you change about a World Cup to make it like even more hype and cool?
I personally would focus. Talk a lot and hype up the overall, like the.
Yes, I agree. Yeah,
that keeps it exciting.
Yeah. We should have like that trophy's a big deal, right? We should
make a really cool trophy for it.
That's
like in skiing, they have the crystal globe.
Yes,
we should have like the crystal wall or something.
Okay, I agree with that fully. Yeah, and Sean, what would you do?
I mean, I'm like, I think Shauna said once, I'm the ideas guy on the athlete commission. I have tons of like random ideas. If one of them, like a big one, involves getting rid of the isolation. I feel like it's kind of a detriment to our sport. It isolates the competitors. You can't have videos and photos and stuff in there. It makes a lot of contrast. But at the same time, I'm totally against like after work for boulders and stuff like that. But if you had boulders that were up, you can do a lot of stuff by like even like the community being like, hey, route setters, set with like this volume. And so you can get a lot more interactive with how it works between the people viewing and the competitors. Again, that's a pretty crazy idea, and a lot of people are going to be like, "Well, let's pull that back."
Yeah, but that's the whole point of this. This is
one of many.
I've just got a quick, my idea, and I know this is entirely unsafe, is like, I want speed climbing, deep water solo. Okay. Forget the auto belays, put a swimming pool at the bottom of the speed wall and do it like that. I'm just saying that's what I would do. There's a question for you, Sean, which I presume is a personal one. It says, who would win in a fight between Boba Fett and Jango Fett? I don't know why someone's asked you that. Do you want to explain the background for that one, and who would win?
I mean, okay, for those of people that aren't, it's from Star Wars. They're both bounty hunters. I won't go into too many details. And honestly, they'd probably both die. They'd probably pull their guns at the exact same time and fire with a 100% kill hit, and they'd both die.
Wow. Okay.
Finally.
Thanks. That's a good answer. Sensible question from Jesse Can, who says, how do you keep training fun? And I guess we've kind of covered this a bit, but like, I mean, it's a grind sometimes, isn't it? I mean, you were saying you spent 5 hours a day in your gym. Like, how do you keep that joy to it?
I mean, for me, a lot of the time it is a grind, but a lot of the times with climbing, and this is why I think we love climbing, is that it's always different. And so with the cave, it was the cave every day, but the holds were always different. And that's what keeps me motivated. And actually, it was a lot of fun just interacting with social media through that, because it felt like everyone was locked down and stuff, but we had this cave. And so I would get people to be like, what holds should I set with? And then I did a spray wall, and people were making me boulders and stuff like that. So to answer the question directly, it's to change things in your training to continually make it fun, which helps because we're climbers. And then honestly, climbing also with other people, because then you get to see what they do, and hopefully they do it better or worse or whatever, but they can challenge you. And that's why it's so important for even for high level climbers to go and train with each other. People often say like, oh, that's weird, you train with your competitors, but it makes everyone better in that session. And so it's very, very common practice among World Cup competitors.
Okay, thank you very much. And that was from Jesse Can, by the way. So last question I think we have time for. In Love with Rocks. Great Instagram title, that one. Favorite comp moment of all time. So let's start with you, Alana. What was your favorite comp moment ever? And it doesn't have to be IFSC. Go outside if you want. But when was the moment that was the best for you?
Like in my career?
Yeah, in your career.
I'm winning the 2020 Pan American Championships to qualify for the Tokyo Games, for sure.
Yeah, that must have been epic. Like, I remember watching it and getting emotional, watching you getting emotional. It was like a wonderful, wonderful moment. And Sean, what was your favorite comp moment?
It's hard. There's a lot. There's definitely a lot of them. I would almost, it's hard because one of them is like a prequel. And then another one was literally doing the first run of speed climbing at the Olympics, because as long as we didn't false start, we weren't sure if you false started, if you were considered Olympian yet. But anyways, no one false started the Olympics. Perfect. So when I didn't false start and got a PB, that had to be one of the most special moments of my life, because now I was an Olympian. And another one, which is actually different than what a lot of people might have thought, was sitting in the chair in 2019 at the World Championships with one route separating myself between the Olympics and not making the Olympics. So it was the first time that people would qualify for the Olympics. You had to be basically top 8 in the World Championships. And I had done bad in speed, bad in boulder, but my best discipline was lead. If I got probably first or second in lead, I would most likely qualify for the Olympics, almost 100%. And so I was sitting in a chair tying in, and I was like, well, how many people in the world have a chance to climb one lead route and qualify to the Olympics? And it excited me. And then I Z-clipped and a bunch of other stuff. But in the end, I did make it. So awesome. But sitting in the chair, it's one of my favorite, I guess, moments in climbing. And what's funny is I actually had that moment again at the Pan Am Games. I needed to win the competition. I was in first going into lead. I cracked a rib, funny, and then I had to climb one lead route. But again, I was trying to tell myself it's the same feeling, and I honestly loved sitting in that chair with everything else that was going on. It was really hard for me, but I had a chance to climb one route and make the Olympics, and I didn't that time. So technically, I'm 1 for 2.
Awesome. Well, look, guys, we have run out of time, so I'm going to have to say goodbye. But thank you, both of you, for joining me. I mean, both of you are just incredible in your own rights. Two athletes I've respected and looked up to my whole time I've been in this industry. So thank you so much, guys. And best of luck for the OQS series next year. I should mention that if people are listening to this on YouTube, you want to go back and watch it, it's going to be on Spotify, the audio version. And we're also going to be doing this quite a lot over the next season. Sometimes it'll be me, sometimes it'll be athletes talking to athletes. We'll have setters on. We've got a whole load of stuff planned. So we can say goodbye now because we've got literally 10 seconds to go. See you later, everyone. Thank you, Sean and Alana. See you later. Goodbye.
Thanks so much, Matt. Hope to do it again. See you guys.